Assalamu alaikum and good evening. My name is Yusuf Ismail and the program you're watching is I Beg to Differ. This program focuses on interactive debate on socio-economic, political, cultural and religious issues affecting us as South Africans, and certainly looking, exploring, unpacking and examining some of the global dominant trends in the international community. The Kashmir conflict is a territorial conflict primarily between India and Pakistan over the Kashmiri region. In recent months, we've heard harrowing and shocking stories of mass murder, of rape, and systematic genocide against the Kashmiri population of men, women, and children, committed primarily by the Indian government and indeed Indian Army. Well, joining us today to discuss this conflict, we were going to have a debate. We may have joined by another guest later on, but joining us immediately for the time being, we're joined by Salman Khan. He's the founder of the South African Kashmiri Action Group, SAKAJ, and one of the first people to institute actions, at least from a prosecutorial point of view, against Narendra Modi, the current Prime Minister of the fascist BJP in India. Welcome, Salman, to I Beg to Differ.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to you and to all the beautiful viewer of ITV.
Well, this is a much needed discussion that we were going to have for some time, and it's good to have you once again. Now, just to give us some sort of clarity and conflict, because a lot of people in the world, in South Africa, certainly know what's going on in Palestine, what's going on in Afghanistan, and of course, many of them know the historical background. But this particular Kashmiri conflict, people know about the human rights violations and atrocities committed by the Indian government, but the actual context behind the conflict, the background, very few people don't know about that. Can you perhaps elaborate the fact that this essentially started off after the partition between India and Pakistan in 1947 over the former princely state of what was then known as Jammu and Kashmir?
Well, okay, Brother Ismail, I'd just like to, as your program, the title is I Beg to Differ, I'd like to start with the difference of opinion on your preamble, if I may. As you mentioned in your prelude that Kashmir is a territorial issue, it definitely is an Indian narrative, and it is not a territorial issue. It's a political and human right and social and socio-economic issue, which India has very nicely dubbed into a territorial issue between India and Pakistan, so the international community should not be getting interfered. Okay, so that is a connection that I like to have, and that is a very, very important, because for the last 70 years, India is been telling the whole world it's a territorial small dispute between India and Pakistan, and that is nothing to worry about it, and South African government or international community should not be worried about it, because it's an internal and it is a territorial issue. And it is definitely not a territorial issue. It is a stolen land. It is a human rights crisis. And India is always been hiding a very big fact that it is not a small territorial issue between India and Pakistan. It is 86,000 kilometer radius of a Kashmir, which they have taken away from against the will of the Kashmiri people in 1947 by their illegal invention of a beautiful valleys of a Jammu Kashmir, as you refer to. But we call it a Kashmir. Anyway, now there is a three part of the Kashmir. One is the Pakistan administrative, we refer to as a Azad Kashmir. The other one is called Indian occupied Kashmir. And the third one is called Askai Chin, which is the Chinese administrated Kashmir, which with the India call it Chinese administrative Kashmir, but we refer to it as India lost the part of a Kashmir during the India and the Chinese war that happened in 1962. But they will not tell you. They will not tell you. Anyway, coming back to the point that the territory of Kashmir, as I said just now, that is 86,000 kilometers, which equate to the size of United Kingdom, or you take 3 times the size of a Belgium. So it's not a small territory. Over 14 million, let's say, I think between 14 to 17 million people live in the valleys in a constant curfew. But now, your question was, what is the historical context? Okay, now let me put you in a picture that before the British arrived to the Indo-Pak, there used to be, we call it a Mughal emperor. And those the people who ruled for 700 years, the India and Pakistan, and Indian scholars and academy refer to as the most peaceful time and the most progressive time on the continent. So in 1858, when the British arrived, like they came to colonize Africa and rest of the world, they also invaded the land of India and Pakistan, which we call it subcontinent. And when they arrived there, they took it over with their, the power and the military invasion, and they took it over the India and Pakistan. And that time, the whole of the territory was comprises of 565 small independent, or we call it a princely state. Okay, those 565 princely state was given a special space in the British Parliament, and is used to call a chamber of princes, where they used to decide how they will govern their own territory in India. So now, when the British was about to leave, when the British realized it in 1941 to 45 that the Second World War cost them so much money, and they don't have a fiscal power to maintain their hegemonist presence in every part of the world. They were pulling down their the empire, and they liquidated their empire in India and Pakistan, and they decided to leave. So when they decided to leave, of course, at the time, I would say the 1935, they bring the bill, they call it the Indian Independence Bill, which dictates, which tells, which is the part of a history, that how the future of India and Pakistan, or the subcontinent, will be formed, because they know that they have to leave. There was an uprising, there was a two-nation theory, there was a stiff resistance combined together, which with the Muslims and Hindus and Sikhs, they wanted to say quit India, and they push around in a way that the way the apartheid was driven out from South Africa, it was exactly the same thing. The British was drive out from the India. So they issued this Bill of Independence, which said that in the future, whatever the new composite of the India and Pakistan, or the new dominant will be, there will be a three set. One, the Muslim majority areas will be called Pakistan. Yeah. The Hindu majority area will be known as Hindustan, India. And then, of course, all the independent state in between, those are undecided, they will have a right either to accede to India, Pakistan, or stay independent. But there was a caveat. If you read the articles, and if you go back into the history and download, and you will see there was a caveat that the ruler cannot decide it on his own, because there was many instances that where the territory was hugely populated with Muslims, but the ruler was Hindu, like in Kashmir. Then in Hyderabad, there was a majority of the people were Hindus, but the Nizam of Deccan, the prince or the king, was Muslim. So it was given a task by the British that you will not be able to unilaterally make a decision and accede to India or Pakistan until you consult to your subject. So that was a technical point.
So Salman, no, I understand. If I could just come in, Salman, one of the things which we also need to tackle is a kind of revisionist material that is coming out, particularly by the far right within India, by the Hindu supremacists or the Hindutva movement, is the argument that is presented, and you see this online as well, that after the partition of India in 47 and a so-called rebellion in the western state districts, the argument is that Pakistani tribal militias invaded Kashmir, leading to the then Hindu rule of Jammu and Kashmir joining India and starting the Indo-Pakistan War of 1947. Can you perhaps comment on that particular aspect? Because the argument is that that was military actions on the basis of Pakistani tribal militia, and that then ceased or ended after the UN-mediated ceasefire along what was eventually described as the so-called line of control after the Indo-Pakistani War of 47.
All right. Okay. Now that's a very critical point, and that's the Indian narrative again. Let me demystify it. Okay. I was coming to this point where you already got into. It's what happened is now the India and Pakistan was born in 1947. The Bill of Indian Independence of 1935 was revised on the 14th of August 1947, where the birth of India and Pakistan happened. Pakistan became independent on the 14th of August 1947, and India was on the 15th of August. Okay, now that bill is still the same, that you cannot exceed, you cannot. Now what happened is that now, very important, the sum of the territory, or the sum of the, like Radcliffe Boundary Commission, he was in charge of distributing. I'm coming to your point of the Pathan or tribal invasion. I will demystify that myth and that Indian narrative as well. But what happened is now the both country was born. Now India was not awarded with the Kashmir, neither do the Pakistan. It was left as its own as independent state. The 86,000 kilometer radius of that country was left. The population was over 90% Muslim, and the Maharaja was Hindu. Now what happened is, the Maharaja didn't want to exceed either with India or Pakistan. He entered straight away at the birth of the both new countries in a standstill agreement. You can Google it, you will search, you will find that agreement. Now in that agreement, he said, I want to have a peace with India and Pakistan, but I still want to be independent because my subjects they're not ready for a vote. And there was already from the 1931, the people of Kashmir already have said they wanted to be with a new Muslim dominant. At that time, there was no Pakistan name.
Yeah.
So in 1931, the Muslim League, the people of the Kashmir, which is now the Sheikh Abdullah, they already said they will be with a Muslim country. Now, since it was left without a word to India and Pakistan, India took a full chance and invaded the land of Kashmir on 1947, exactly on 27th of October, 1947, which we refer to as Kashmir Black Day. Now, when they landed into the peaceful land of a Kashmiri people, the civil war break out. That civil war, what they call it, which they could not actually fight because they thought they would be strong enough to cripple any uprising. When they could not find, they start blaming the Pakistan is
sending us. Civil war between who? So, Salman, civil war between who? Was it the population engaging in civil war against each other? Civil war against who?
No, because the civil war was against the Maharaja loyalists and the Muslims. There was a civil war. There was a 2,000 people was killed between 1940s, October 1940s, the August of the 1947 to the before the Indian army landed.
Okay. Well, Salman, I just have to stop you. Just one quick thing. We have to go for a quick ad break, Salman, as I've been just informed, and we want to continue this fascinating discussion shortly. But we'll have to stop you. We'll be back shortly. Welcome back to our Beg to Differ, and if you just joined us, we are discussing the genocide, the ongoing conflict that's happening in Kashmir, and with me via Skype, I'm joined via Skype, Salman Khan, who is an activist and certainly extremely knowledgeable on this particular issue. Salman, I had stopped you initially on that particular point that you're making. Just complete the point, then we can move on to the next segment pertaining to the aspect of 1947.
That's a very critical point that you have raised, and I'm glad that you raised that point. But now what happened is, now the Indian forces landed, and there was a conspiracy theory which is written after 50 years when the British archive are disclassified, and you can go and search, called India Remembered by the Lord Mountbatten granddaughter, the book called India Remembered, and the other one is called Indian Summer. There's two books which tells that the British was involved in that invasion. They helped the British because Indian army did not have any aircraft. It was the British Royal Air Force which uplifted the army on the first instant to move it across. Now, there's a very important point that you need to understand. There was a small territory called Gurdaspur and Firozpur, which was fully Muslim dominated area. It was given to India in the first 1935, the Bill of India, it was in Pakistan side of West Punjab, but it was awarded for some unknown reason to India, the Firozpura and Gurdaspura, which provided the India road link, because if that too small territory of a Muslim area wasn't given to the India, which was completely against the rules of the independence, then India could not have transported the army through the road link into the Kashmir. So it was already pre-decided with the British. Anyway, now the war break out between the loyalist, Hindus loyalist, the Sikh loyalist of the Maharaja, and of course they're fighting against each other between Muslims and the Maharaja and the Sikhs. But when the Hindus arrive, when the Indians arrive, they get together and they'll start fighting against the India. Now the India could not understand what to do. Then they start blaming, they are not fighting against us, it is Pakistan. Now I can tell you, take a map and put it on there. In 1947, the Pakistan do not have any tribal area close to good 700 kilometers. The next tribal area from the Srinagar was 800 kilometers in Peshawar. Okay, the Peshawar area was the only area where the Muslims or the tribal area were, and it is still such a mountainous area. Until today, there is no road. How come within a week the tribal forces move with so much of ammunition that it had nothing to move to.
So you're saying it's a myth, it didn't happen. Are you saying that that didn't happen?
No, it didn't happen because it was no chance. There was no 800 kilometer people from the Peshawar could not move to Srinagar in a 1 week, as India said in their narrative. It is just not possible.
So someone, this is important, and I mean, there's so much you've said, and there's so much to swallow. It's extremely complex, and this aspect is not that well known in the public mind. I mean, certainly in the depth and the sphere you've given. But I just want to backpedal even further back. Prior to the partition, I mean, partition's 1947, prior to the British invasion of India, Kashmir, as I understand, are you saying that it was an autonomous region? Because, I mean, the whole process of India, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, I mean, this is all the aspect of the systematic process of balkanization that happened at the turn of the century, where you know, former ex-colonial empires or former empires like the Ottomans and so on were divided into nation states. Now I'm saying prior to that process of balkanization, was Kashmir an Ottoman region, or was it part and parcel of the Mughal Empire, which obviously incorporated the region of what is known as India, parts of Pakistan, and to my knowledge, even certain sections of Sri Lanka? Was Kashmir part and parcel of that particular Mughal Empire, which obviously incorporated a significant population of Hindus? Because that's the argument that is being presented, that Hindus were also in a significant part of the population in Kashmir, not just Muslims, and certainly a lot of Hindus converted to Islam.
All right, okay, very, very important. Your question is very, very valid here. Okay, if you take a total composite of a Kashmir, I would say even you go 2000 year or 1000 year before, it was always been predominantly populated by the Muslims. At the time of 1947, just to come close to the history and not go into backward, is only 7% of the population of India, the Kashmir was Hindu, and 3% was between Sikh and the Buddhist. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, for the last 1500 years, if we track it down, Kashmir always been independent state. Okay, it has been ruled by Chinese dynasty, never been Sri Lanka. I think is a correction there. It's been ruled by the Chinese dynasty. Then it was Buddhist dynasty. Then it was Hindu dynasty. Then it come to Kotka, then Guptas, then to the
Mughals. The Mughals, were they involved? Were the Mughals in control?
Mughal was controlled, but it was invaded by the Afghans. So Afghan and the Mughals had a fight, but Durrani, the Ahmad Shah Durrani, they ruled for almost like 70, 80 years. Then it moved to the Lahore, which is the Sikh dynasty, take it over, then go back again to the Nadir Shah. Then the Persian invaded the Kashmir. They were there. So the good history for the last 200 years, the Kashmir was a autonomous state, was independent, but it was ruled by the different dynasty. Then the British come in the 1800, they took it over. They had a fight, or they had a war against the Sikh, and then they defeated the Sikh defeated the British, and it was sold to the Sikh dynasty for over 150,000 pound, and that was the historical, the Amritsar Treaty, and then from there onward.
No, Kashmir. So sorry to interrupt you. I just have to interrupt you now, just on that point, because RSS literature and BJP literature, they go back, you know, in order to establish dominance, they always appeal to ancient history. Now, they cite, for example, a 12th century text called the Rajatha Rangini. I don't know if you've heard of it. And according to that text, the argument presented is that this was, Kashmir Valley was formed part and parcel of a lake in traditional histories. And effectively, it was Hindu dominated until the Muslim invaders came. So their argument is that this was part and parcel of Hindu land, which formed part and parcel of the land of Hind, the Indus Valley, what they would appeal to as being part and parcel of India. How do you basically challenge that particular narrative on the basis that, you know, things obviously change and nations evolve and countries obviously change over a particular period of time, and there's conquest and empires? Did you get the point that I'm asking?
Yes, no. You got the valid point. India been saying that their God was born there in the valleys of Kashmir, and even though there is a narrative, and then I can send you the links and you can search. Some people, the Christian, they throw the biblical references. They say that Jesus was also live in Kashmir.
Yeah, so sure. That's the Ahmadiyya. The Ahmadiyyas use that particular point of view. The Ahmadiyyas cite the fact that he died in Kashmir. I mean, his grave is in Kashmir. Yeah.
So there is a lot of history, but I think if you look at the Indian map, the Indian civilization or the Hindu civilization was more toward I would say, toward the Bombay. It was more toward the Aryan, which is between the Indus valleys. They were never on the top onto the mountain, because they never liked the cold weather. So they were always down south, then took up north. Who were there more prominently? It was the Buddhist. The Buddhist from the Han dynasty, from the Chinese influence, and the Persian from the Kashgar and the Russians. Because still, if you go to the Kashmir today, you will see a lot of people with the indigenous Chinese-looking or a Russian-looking people in Kashmir. So Hindus were there, but was always less than 10%. It's never been dominant.
So they present this argument that as it stands now, there's 77% Muslim, as I understand, to about 20% Hindu or 10% Hindu, 3% of Sikhs and Buddhists. The argument is that 1,000 years ago, the position was the opposite. The majority were Hindus. Muslims were the invaders, and through a systematic process of killing, mass murder, and alleged conversion, the former Hindus then became Muslims, or some of them were expelled. I mean, that narrative is being drummed to the extreme. And that's a point that I made with this argument with this gentleman, Amit, from the Indian Action Front, and Pranel Singh. You know, in the course of the discussion, which I'm bringing to your attention later, which you never heard portions of it, you just heard the abusive aspect. His point was that Muslims are invaders. Kashmir was Hindu, whether it's part of India or not. Hindus were in the majority. Muslims came either by means of forced conversion or genocide. They changed the population. Now they want to exceed and separate from what was formerly part and parcel of Hindu territory. That's the whole gist of the argument, which is, in my opinion, fairly weak.
Now, I want to give you two references, very important. If you go into the British Royal Archive or Oriental Archive in France, you will pick up a 3,000 old history, which I've been researching on my PhD. And the third one is the Chinese archives. None of them have mentioned any word of an Indian or Hindu dominance in the Kashmir. The dominance people were living, it was a Buddhist, Chinese, and as I said, like some of part of the Russians. Yes, it was the Muslim ruler did come in 1700. From 1700 onward, it was intermittently was maintained. The Muslim, the Muslim was dominant into that part of the world. Hindus was never dominant. Yes, there were Buddhists, there were temples, there is the presence of temple. You can go into the three most authentic archive of the world, one from the China, one from the British, and one from Russia, and also from the French. You will never find any Hindu genocide or whatsoever. So what's been happening, my brother, let me explain to you. The Indian narrative has been very strong on Kashmir in every part. It is only after the demise of Burhan Wani, the social media, the real Indian story, the real Kashmiri story is coming. Now I'm going to come back to the point, because otherwise we'll be completely digressing and we'll be lost into the history. The critical point, what happened after the Indian invasion? Then the civil war was on, and it turned against the Indians, and the Indian was getting defeated. So Nehru quickly ran to the United Nations. Now that's very important point, and that if anybody come, I want him to debate with me. Now it was Nehru who took the case straight away within the 3 months of the invasion from the October. In January 1948, Nehru ran to United Nations to make it international issue, and he wanted international, I would say, the peace and observer mission to come and station and look after the Kashmir territory. So he went to United Nations Security Council in 1948 in January, and the famous resolution, after listening to the India and Pakistan version of the story, the United Nations Resolution 48 of 1940, Resolution 47 of 1948 clearly state neither the India nor the Pakistan have any rightfulness onto the land of Kashmiri people. Okay. Kashmiri land belongs to the Kashmiri people.
So Sama, we have to go for, so Sama, I'm just sorry about that. We have to go, time's running, we have to go for a quick ad break. But just before that, I just want you to think about this, that prior to that, in 1947, the talk also, and I want you to probably comment on this when we come back, is that apparently Muhammad Ali Jinnah was believed to have written to the Maharaja and was supposed to have said to have purportedly bribed him to join or to basically accede to Pakistan. And faced with the Maharaja's indecision, what then basically happened is, the narrative goes, is that the Muslim League agents apparently clandestinely worked in Punch to encourage the local Muslims to an armed revolt. Now, I want you to basically just hold on to that thought, think on that. I want to explore that particular issue because that's quite dominant And they're saying that that is, in fact, what led to the internal unrest that subsequently transpired. But hold that, Salman. We have to go for an ad break. And when we're back, we're going to explore that particular issue. Welcome back to I Beg to Differ, and if you've joined us, we are in segment 3 of a fascinating discussion which is generally not discussed by the mainstream media on Kashmir, and certainly I'm joined by an extremely knowledgeable individual in the via Skype, Salman Khan, founder of the South African Kashmiri Action Group, or SAKAJ, and one of the first people, and certainly we'll explore that, to institute apparently some sort of legal action or taking Narendra Modi, the fascist Prime Minister of India, to the World Court for Crime. Salman, just on the last point that I basically made, the issue about the supposed bribery that Muhammad Ali Jinnah put forth to the Maharaja in order to join Pakistan, and when he was faced with the indecision by the Maharaja, then clandestine agents in Punch apparently led to what we would call agent provocateurs, causing this kind of social unrest leading to violence that subsequently transpired. Can you perhaps comment on that?
Yes, I like to comment on it. Is again the Indian narrative. That is not the truth. When Jinnah received a letter of standstill, he accepted. There was no such a thing that the Pakistan want them to exceed. They accepted the standstill agreement, but it was the lullaby from the Indian Foreign Minister with the VP Mehman Patel and the Nehru. They landed on the 24th of October 1947, and forced Maharaja Hari Singh to sign. Okay, now another very critical point you must understand, that any type of conspiracy or any clandestine thing was not possible. Why? Because the army chief was Indian, Pakistan was still the British at the time. So they were controlling all the information, they were controlling telecommunication, and they were controlling all the movement of any type of action. So Pakistan was completely under the control of. There is a book, it's called The Disputed Legacy by Alan Lamb. If you go there, he's a British journalist, a historian. He has openly discussed that matter, that this narrative of Jinnah have sent the people or there was clandestine operation is impossible. Why? Because all the telecommunication which is on the British archive shows the British, the Pakistan army chief, which was General Gracie, and the Ashlik of India, they were in constant communication and they were facilitating the Indian invasion. So there was no such a thing. But the narrative was created because of the Pakistan tribal forces invasion. The Indian went to help. No, that is wrong. Okay, now, very important thing. What happened at the United Nations in 1948? That the Nehru have a humble pie, because he thought he will be given a task that yes, now it is an international issue, Pakistan must pull back its tribal forces, and now you have the land. The United Nations surprises him and said, no, it's not your land, it's not a Pakistani land belongs to the people of Kashmir. You must call for a free and fair plebiscite. My brother, I want you to Google the Article 47 of 1948 of United Nations Resolution Council, and you will be able to read what I'm just telling you.
I've got it before me. I've got it before me in front of me on my computer. I've got it downloaded in preparation for this interview.
Just go to the 7 or 8 paragraph, and you will see that India was given a task to call for free and fair plebiscite in Kashmir. Nehru accepted it, Jinnah accepted, both of them signed. Until today, that plebiscite or referendum has not been availed, and that is a bone of contention. When the people of Kashmir, 100,000 people have died in the uprising because they're demanding their right of self-determination, and India is denying it. Now, very important thing that I like to bring it to you, because I know we don't have a time. The Article 370, which has recently been revoked or abrogated, where does that come from? Because what happened is, in 1948, when this election was the referendum supposed to take place, India did not do it, and the civil war continued and the uprising continued. That India decided, and after 4 or 5 years, in 1954, they said, you know what, this problem is not going away, let's do something. So they amended their Indian Union Constitution, Article 375, and they said, now we're going to give the Kashmir an autonomous state. So don't fight with me. We will give you full autonomy, semi-autonomy. The only 3 things we will control: your army, your fiscals, and telecommunication. Rest you can all have it.
So did India acquire the accession through fraud and violence? Did India acquire through fraud and violence? Because according to my understanding, then Jinnah's position was that a plebiscite was unnecessary and states should basically accede according to the majority population. The further argument is that, accordingly, Muhammad Ali Jinnah was willing to urge Junagadh to accede to India in return for Kashmir. And for that, he basically, for a plebiscite, Jinnah then demanded simultaneous troop withdrawal because he felt that the average Muslim would never have the courage to vote for Pakistan in the face of Indian troops. Is that actually what happened?
Okay, now let me tell you something. You know what is today the Northwest Pakistan is?
Yes.
Northwest Pakistan, which is between the Kabul. Nehru run the narrative that is a territory of Afghanistan and there should be a referendum. So the Lord Mountbatten, according to this, the Bill of Indian Independence, they run an independence, what you call it, the referendum. And the people of Northwest Province, which is a Pakistan, the fourth province, they voted 97% in favor of Pakistan. So there could have been a demand from the Jinnah that there should be a free and fair plebiscite. But I must tell you, you're quoting again Jinnah. Jinnah was not making a statement. It was a foreign minister, Liaquat Ali Khan. He was making a statement, and I still like to see an authentic version of what you're saying. That is the truth. But let me come back to this Article 375. Now, Article 375, which the Indian government allowed Kashmir to be an independence. Okay, now there is a very critical point. I want to go back 3 years or 4 years back in 1947. If the India maintained, because India said to the United Nations that we are now have a legal right to be in Kashmir. We didn't invade because we was invited by the Maharaja because he signed the instrument of accession. I want you to Google it and check the instrument of accession signed by the Maharaja, and that's the reason we come and we bring our forces. We, as an advocate of the human right, as a erudite of the Kashmir, we are asking India to provide us a original copy of that instrument of accession which signed by the Maharaja Hari Singh, because they didn't have it. They didn't provide it to the United Nations, and then on that basis, United Nations asked them to have a referendum. Because if he legally accede, why India has to go to United Nations? Because it's a legal part of it. So, okay, now that's one thing. Now, second thing is very important is that Article 375, 35A. Now, a lot of people say, what about the A? No, it's not A only, because A only specifically looking at the Kashmir autonomous state, but it's go all the way to Z, because the Junagadh, the Manipura, the Nagaland, every other state was given the same autonomous state. So India has given a same autonomous state within their territory more than 30 to 40 other regions, which is also asking for the liberation today. Now what happened? That they're giving this autonomous state to the Kashmir to rule. You can have your currency, you can have your parliament, you can have everything else, and now you run with it, and you are constitutionally not a part of India, but you are autonomous state where you can run everything apart from your military, your fiscals, and your telecommunication. What happened in the on the 5th of August, where abrogation or revoking, illegal revoking of that article, because according to their own constitution, you will not be able to make any unilateral decision without consultation and proper due consultation taking place between a autonomous state and your union. So India did not consult, rather they lock up all the leaders into the jail and they annex overnight.
Okay, Salman, I just want to bring, I don't want to stick too much. We have to go to the present situation presently, but just to wrap this up. The other position is that apparently when Lord Mountbatten flew to Lahore for a conference with Jinnah, I'm not so sure if you alluded to that earlier, the proposal was purportedly made that apparently all the princely states where the ruler did not accede to a dominion corresponding to, for example, the majority population, then in those instances the accession should be decided by a reference to an impartial reference to the will of the people. The story goes is that apparently Jinnah rejected the offer. And there's another Indian scholar by the name of A.G. Noorani who pointed out that at that point in time, Jinnah in fact ended up squandering his own leverage. That effectively, when he was given that opportunity, this whole notion of the impartial reference to the will of the people, he actually rejected that entire offer by Mountbatten.
No, it's not true. Why? I'll tell you. In 1947, when the Lord Mountbatten asked for a referendum in the one of the Pakistan, which was awarded to Pakistan, the Northwest Province, Jinnah, he said, if that is the rule it is, let's have the referendum. So I would say this is a false statement, that is a false narrative, because Jinnah open-heartedly a part of Pakistan which was already awarded, he still went for the referendum. So why he will refuse to have a referendum in Kashmir? Because the majority is 97%, and the All India Muslim League of Kashmir have already said that they would be the part of Pakistan. So India, the Jinnah, as a prime minister, as also a very learned attorney, he will never refuse it.
Are you saying that?
And rebuke it.
Yeah, back then, if given the choice, are you saying that the majority population of Kashmir, if given the choice, three choices, joining India, joining Pakistan, or having the right to self-determination, that they would in the majority opt for joining Pakistan? Because the narrative that I understood is that in most instances, they would opt for the will of self-determination, where Kashmir becomes an independent, autonomous region, independent from Pakistan and independent from India.
Yes, 100%. I think after the 70 year, the Kashmiri has a very pragmatic approach toward that, and they think at the moment, as I'm thinking loudly, what I realize it, because it's never been a consultation, a due consultation with what actually the people of Pakistan and India wanted. Washington formula. There have been a lot of formulas to peace plan, but everybody come out of the box thinking and say, this is what we accept. But the proper discussion between the stakeholder of India here, Pakistan, Azad Kashmiris, and the Indian occupied Kashmir, if you ask them, I would say maybe 70 to 80% of people will opt for an independent Kashmir. I think that's what the national narrative is there at the moment. The people think that both are the countries are semi-failure, rather have our independence, and then we will decide in the future. But in the future, going forward, after the independence, which way they can go in 10-year time, I would say still they will tilt toward the Pakistan because of the majority Muslim area. But I think let's give them a right of self-determination. Why gays? I said under the auspices of international community and United Nations, let them have the vote. Let them decide whether they go.
They have been in India. They have been in India. I may also add a number of, I would say, individuals who are viewed as universalists with the so-called revolutionary ideals, although that's debatable. But when you look at people like Mohandas Gandhi, or, for example, Dr. Ambedkar. I mean, these were individuals, well, I would say more particularly, Dr. Ambedkar was more, in the sense of egalitarian in his outlook. What were the individuals of these positions? Because within India, there were a lot of thinkers and certainly individuals with revolutionary ideals. I'm just curious to know, has there never been a position or a strong position from them, which I haven't seen in their writings, on the Kashmiri position? Gandhi as one example and Dr. Ambedkar as another.
I can give you many examples. Arundhati Roy, the prominent...
No, of course, Arundhati Roy, presently and now.
She said the Kashmir have been raped of its own dignity. I'm sure you heard about all these things. There are many, there is over 100. There is a book, it's called Why Kashmiris Are Protesting. There was 100 NGO from all over the India. They went after the Burhan Wani demise to find out and create the fact-finding mission. They come back with the saying that India is holding onto the Kashmir illegally. People are not happy. That's why the people are dying. Even the people who are doing the PhDs, they're taking the guns. There are more insurgent, or there are more people taking up the guns in the last 10 years into the time of the Modi government than any time else.
Well, what is Article 370? Okay, well, what is Article 370? Just quickly in one line, what's Article 370 that we hear all the time?
Okay, Article 375, 35A was implemented in 1954, which give a Kashmir an autonomous state because there was a dispute, there was a stalemate from the United Nations. India didn't want to hold the referendum, so they say let's do a technical, the run, and then they bring this article where they provide a Kashmir an autonomous state. There you can have your parliament, you can have your currency, whatever, and then you can be happy as autonomous state. Which on the 5th of August they revoke it illegally and they incorporated that whole land of Kashmir without any proper due consultation, and that is illegal, and that's why the people of Kashmir are standing up around the world and they're fighting it. And India know for sure that for the last 72 years they've been hiding it. But since the demise of Burhan Wani and Mannan Wani, the PhD student, the social media have get hold of the real story. India cannot control with its Western ally, the media. It is on the media, on the Twitter and Facebook, and that's why in the 2018 United Nations issue a 48 pages report. Now in 2019, in July, there was another 53 pages report. So now all this report is supposed to be discussed last year at the United Nations, and hopefully by this year, and India is using its lobby not to discuss that atrocities, and they were finding themselves more and more cornered. And after the Imran Khan visit to the United Nations, and not the United Nations, to USA, India find when the Trump said, I am willing to mediate on the Kashmir issue. India took it by the surprise, and within a week they annexed, because they think now this is getting out of the hand. The international community is condemning us. International community is asking us. United Nations is asking us for sending the fact-finding mission. Before that happen and all these things the lid get off, we rather annex it and we say now it is a part of it. But they had a humble pie. Now it's become a more prominent issue in international media, and the whole world is condemning India. So I think it's a fait accompli. That is a mistake made by the Modi, which is good for the Kashmir in a sad way. But now the Kashmir issue is no longer on the bank burner of an international media.
It's not certainly in international. It's in international headlines. Well, hold that thought, Salman. We're going to go for ad break, and we're going to be back for the final segment of I Beg to Differ, where we'll wrap up and continue this fascinating discussion. We'll see you soon. Welcome back to I Beg to Differ, and if you just joined us, we are discussing the issue pertaining to Kashmir, and we're involved in a fascinating discussion. And I'm basically going to now try and get the Indian Action Group, Pranel Singh. We're going to try and phone him. I'm getting my video editor to call him in the studios. He's part of the Indian Action Group. He agreed to debate the subject. Let's call him and see what he says on this particular issue and what his perspective is on this particular aspect. We're going to have him on speaker. We're going to call him. We want him to join this particular discussion and then see what he says, because he had a lot to say on this particular discussion a few days ago when we attempted to call him. Seem to be calling him now. Hello, good day. Mr. Pranel Singh?
Yeah, who is it?
Mr. Pranel Singh, hi. We actually want to discuss the issue of the Kashmir situation that's going on. And for some time, you've been repeatedly abusing us. We want to know what the situation is in Kashmir. We want to give you the opportunity to present your perspective. Seems to have cut us off. Let's just call him again. Well, he seems to be taking away is not answering our calls. That's Pranel Singh. Pranel Singh is part of the, I think, Indian Action Front. I was given his details and his communication and numbers to give us a perspective of Kashmir. He was extremely abusive yesterday, although he had agreed tentatively to come on this particular program and discuss the issue of Kashmir with us. But what is the issue, Salman, is that when we hear the Indian position, even those, as you mentioned earlier in your personal communications with me, those from Harvard University or Oxbridge education, they tend to become extremely abusive, extremely defensive on this particular issue. Why? Why is this kind of paranoid obsession on Kashmir to the extent that they would probably kill you for that?
Well, I will sum it up in a way that the whole high idealism of Indian intellectualism come to the end when you talk to the Kashmir. They become abusive. They do not want to talk about it. Even the highest level diplomat, they will become very abusive. And first of all, they will always avoid at any cost that they will come. I mean, I had not the ITV, the ETV and SABC interview was set up, and when they find out that I was in the studio, they walk away in the last minute. They didn't want to have any debate with me or any platform. They did not want. They want the pre-recorded so they can rebuke all the claims, but they do not want to have an open debate because they know they have a lot to answer. Now, coming back to very, very critical points that we were discussing earlier. Now, what we have to ask ourselves, what is the South Africa have done for the people of Kashmir? Now we must give a reference to very important, like, there will be no other leader on this African continent will be born like a Madiba, like Ahmed Kathrada, the Oliver Tambo. But let's see what the Nelson Mandela said. Nelson Mandela said categorically at the non-aligned movement in Durban in 1988 on the 15th of August that all of us are worried about the Jammu and Kashmir, and we are ready, we are willing to lend our help to resolve this matter peacefully as it has been enshrined in the United Nations resolutions. And he said this in 1998 in Durban, where the Indians, the whole diplomatic corps and the whole Indian delegation was up against Nelson Mandela. But he was a person of a foresight. He was a person who can see the massacre is coming. And I'm talking about 20 years ago almost, he always tried to talk about Kashmir from South African platform. Now you will ask me what's happening in South Africa at the moment because of the new liberal our political system, our South African DIRCO and the government is tilted toward India because India has 1.2 billion people population and 2.3 trillion economic GDP. So of course they are tilting toward, but they have a moral responsibility because the South African foreign policy have 4 pillars, and 2 of them or 3 of them dealing with the human right, advancement of the democracy, and using the international institutions to bring the peace and harmony in the world. If you take that first 3 part of that South African, the 3-4 pillar of South African foreign policy, they are not doing any justice. And of course, the South African pattern of the voting in the United Nations has been very shameful. If you look at the case of Myanmar, they become absentia. They didn't vote.
Salman, just sorry to interrupt you, and I know that's an important point you're making about the activism. One thing which I want to know, and certainly a lot of people out there want to know, is that Kashmir, Jammu Kashmir region, as it stands today, legally, what is its status? Is it described as the occupied territories? Is it an autonomous region, or is it still in some capacity, some or the other, it's still administered by India, and India considers it as part and parcel of its country? What's the legal status of Kashmir as it stands right now?
If you ask me the legal, not the Indian narrative, which is very strong in South Africa, international, the recent, because South Africa is on the United Nations Security Council as a non-permanent member, and our Jerry Majala was a part. He said recently that after the 50 year, when they discussed the Kashmir issue, he said that India have no right of taking any unilateral decision because the Kashmir issue has been registered at the United Nations and all the international forum as a disputed territory between India and Pakistan. So it is a legal issue. It is not an Indian territory. It has been administrated, but it's not the Indian territory, which is an illegal thing. They done it on the 5th of August, that they have say we annexed it. It's no longer the part of our international disputed territory. We walk away with that, and the Chinese stand up into the United Nations.
One thing we haven't discussed in this particular discussion, we've discussed a lot about the history, the technicalities, human rights violation. What's going on? Are Indian soldiers going in and systematically raping Kashmiri women, massacring them on the streets? What's going on? Tell us about that.
Well, you know what that is one of the most atrocious things, which is a heartbreaking thing, that the whole of the international community, especially South Africa, is turning a blind eye onto the human rights crisis for the last 72 years. There is no civil liberties, there is no freedom of speech, no freedom of expression, no freedom of association for the last 72 years. It has always been a perpetual curfew or a martial law.
Is gang rape happening? Is gang rape by Indian soldiers happening, or are they isolated cases?
No, it's all over. You see, just take 100,000 people, those who have been recorded as Amnesty International human rights bodies, it's been extrajudicial kill. 100,000 people in 72 years, multiply or divided by the 72 years, you will find out how many people was killed per month. Over 20,000 women have been raped. There's more than 18,000 people are forced disappeared. 7,000 people ungraved, the unmasked grave have been found. The graves has been found, which is unmarked. 7,000 people have been buried without any name, nothing. And this is the real life situation. The school kids and the primary school kids cannot walk in a group of 3 because they call it as a mob. They can only walk in 2. If you walk in a 3, they will shoot to kill. I mean, now what's happening in Kashmir now? They don't have even the internet. If you Google, the highest shutdown of internet in the world is in Jammu and Kashmir. So there is no civil liberties. There is a new human rights, and we, as a champion of South Africa from this beautiful land, people are look up to us from the Kashmir and ask us, what the people of South Africa doing for us? And we said, no, we are lobbying, we are fighting. Look, we opened a case in South Africa. I must bring that into your attention. That was the first time in the history of the 72 year of the Kashmiri struggle that we brought a successful case with the thanks to the advocate Boda and Yusuf Ismail from the Mala, that we bring a war crime case on the Geneva Convention, on the Rame statue. We evoke South African, their own constitute, and bring the war crime case in 2008 when the Narendra Modi was visiting during the 10th BRICS meeting in South Africa.
And that's fascinating, and that is phenomenal. That's phenomenal on your part to have done that. What is quite remarkable is that, I mean, obviously you mentioned BRICS, which is a passing reference. When Modi was in South Africa, he was welcomed by leading Muslim businessmen who got their fingers in the pie, even in Islamic organizations. I mean, this is so-called an Islamic station. But the point is, a large number of Muslim businessmen were there giving Modi a welcome. the South African government, the ANC government, is on the fence on the Kashmiri issue, even though they allude to the aspect of human rights because of the fact that they want to maintain these continuous bilateral relationships with India. Certainly there's trade that's happening between these two nations, and so human rights will be sacrificed on the altar of expediency by the South African government, and by even within the Muslim community. There are a number of people that basically will openly welcome Modi with arms. If you recall a couple of years back when he came to South Africa, that to me is shocking and despicable of the worst kind.
Yes. Yeah, I want to just say something, sum it up in a nice way. You know, you heard about the Lawrence of Arabia.
Yeah, sure. Key Lawrence, yes.
Now, we also have a Lawrence of Africa, and we have some Muslims, very shameful business people, those who licking the boots of a Gandhi in South Africa. Okay, that's one point. Second is, our NPA, our judiciary is very independent. The case was open. He was about to be arrested. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa sent Jeff Radebe on record, sent to New Delhi in a private jet, and assured him that you can join us for the meeting, and we're giving you a presidential diplomatic immunity. You will not be arrested. You can Google that, and you will find hundreds of the references what I said to you. It was given a task to the South African police and security that no media will be allowed during his presence. 300 meters around him, no media will go, because anybody can ask him.
Hold on, stop that thought. That's important. You're saying, and this is important to the people because you said it quite fast, and I want the people in the views to know, you're saying President Cyril Ramaphosa gave the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi diplomatic immunity and chartered the safe passage via private jet, and of course immunity from any form of prosecution in order for him to come and attend the summit in South Africa. That's what happened.
That's 100% exactly what you just said. Again, I reiterate, this is exactly what it happened. You can go and Google. The Jeff Radebe was sent to bring him in the private jet, and the diplomatic immunity was offered to him. The case is still on. The Hawk applied for a visa to go and investigate the case in Jammu and Kashmir. I still got the letter, which I can give it to you. You can put it on the ITV. That the Indian government refused. They said, no, this is the internal matter. We will not allow you. We will not give you the visa to go. And the case is still on, and they are asking, now the Hawks is asking us to give us a Skype interview into the Kashmir with the victims. We tried two of the evidence that those who given an affidavit, they have disappeared already, because I'm sure they have been found by the Indian intelligence services, because we had a linkage between them. So the case is still on, and that is whenever the Modi tried to come to South Africa, that case is still active.
Forget for a while. Forget for a while South Africa, but I mean Muslim majority country Saudi Arabia. I mean they're basically involved in they're involved in selling intelligence armaments to the Indian government, which is basically used for the killing of people in Kashmir. Talk about that.
My brother, just go back into the history. What happened in 1921? That the 1911 to 1921, the Arab national uprising. The Lawrence of Arabia got into the hands. Got into the Saudi Arabia and took the tribal Buddhian people. Those are now the House of Saud. These are the people, they are running the Saudi Arabia, and they are the people who are giving 65 billion US dollar aid to India. They are the people who have actually signed a secret treaty to create the state of Israel. So what you can expect now, when the Sheikh of United Arab Emirates that awarded the highest civilian award, I said it is like a brother who is standing outside the room and his sister is being gang raped in a room. When the rape is coming out, he's giving a gold medal. That's exactly what the king of the Dubai and the people in the Middle East.
It's a shocking analogy, but it's actually true. We end up the show, but just to wrap up, if you can do it in 30 seconds or 45 seconds, I'll give you the extension there. What is a way forward? I mean, in view of the fact that we are going to be facing these uphill battles with the government, the South African government, a number of key figures in the administration within the South African context, what can people actually do? Creating awareness is one thing. What else can we do?
There are the three things we can do. One is to make a lots of dua, because the most powerful tool the Mu'min have it is a dua. Dua will never get rejected for the oppressed people. One, very important. Secondly, as a South African citizen, we have a right to write a letter to our foreign ministry, and also to the United Nations, also to the Indian embassy, and write it down and ask them, protest very peacefully, and ask them what's going on in Kashmir, we're not happy, and of course, socially, morally, and diplomatically, and politically boycott them at every corner. Because South Africa, when they were fighting the apartheid, the most powerful tool ANC used, it was a condemnation, the boycott sanction against South African, the big companies, and that's brought down them to the knees. And I think there's three things if you can combine: make dua, write letters, use the social media, and third, also boycott, divest, and sanction India. That's a key thing we can do.
Last point, Salman. Your website. What's your website that people can go and visit to get the alternative information on Kashmir? What's your website?
My website is Kashmir Global Movement, KashmirGlobalMovement.com.
So it's Kashmir Global Movement, one word, .com, KashmirGlobalMovement.com. Salman Khan, founder of the Second African Kashmiri Action Group, SAKAJ. We want to thank you for this passionate discussion and discourse. We hope to have you again, hopefully in the future, for further discussions and indeed debates. This debate was aborted. Unfortunately, both the individuals from the Indian Action Front decided not to turn up and became abusive after discovering that this was going to be a debate. But we will hope to have further sessions in the future. We want to thank you. And if you've joined us, we've been watching I Beg to Differ.
I would request, Ismail, the next time you have a debate, bring these three people who was on the Modi red carpet roll about Muslim. I'm not going to give the name. I think you know the names. Let them bring it and ask them to justify it. If not, they cannot justify it, why they were on the VIP red carpet, VIP welcoming, the committee from the South African Muslim community. If they're not, then they publicly apologize for their stand.
Absolutely. I will certainly do that in the future. You've been watching I Beg to Differ, and join us next week for more hard-hitting debate and discussion. Till then, greetings of peace and Assalamu Alaikum.